Today's daf is Nun Vav. We're going to start on Nun Hey, 4 lines from the bottom of the page. And we basically what we talked about yesterday was we're trying to understand why Rabbi Yehuda, first of all, doesn't have the concept of 2 stands in the Hechal, in the Kodesh. He has only one stand, one golden stand for the blood to rest on, either the blood of the bull or the blood of the Sa'ir, of the goat, but not both of them. And the Gemara came from a ba'akifin. It came backwards. It started with a different subject. It started talking about the issue on Nun Hey Amud Aleph. It started talking about Rabbi Yehuda with respect to the shofarot, the money that would be collected in various containers for korbanot, and said, they called them shofarot. I guess the shape must have been maybe, it's describing the shape. It was wide on the top. Maybe it became narrow. So I think that that's why they called it that. It's probably the other way. Probably actually it was narrow on top because they want people to put their hand in and take the money out. Right. It came to So the issue became, why doesn't Rabbi Yehuda have a box that you can put the money for chatat, for the sin offerings? And we said, first the suggestion was because he doesn't rely on writing. He says labels are not reliable. People make mistakes. Then he says, no, he relies on labels. Labels are good. The problem is let le berera. He says you can't retroactively clarify something. Meaning, right now I need to know what it is. I can't establish it later. I can't say, you know what? Either A or B will be the case. I'll decide later. You can't do that. So you can't put money in and say, either, people put money into the pot, and you say, if somebody dies, then this money belonged to that somebody. I'm going to take money out and say it belonged to that somebody, and therefore I get the money of the person who died out of the pot. He said, you can't do that. That's called brera. That means doing something later to determine the reality of before. So everybody put their money in. Bob dies. We just made up the name, okay? Let's say Bill. Bill dies. Now I say, okay, I'm going to take money out and say, this money was really the money of Bill. I'm going to throw it out. Now Bill's money is not in anymore. You can't do that. So where do we get Minalan? Where do we get the idea that Rabbi Yehuda does not hold of Berera? He says you can't retroactively clarify things. How do we know that? Perhaps you'll suggest that we get it from the following Mishnah. This Mishnah is always cited when they try to prove what Rabbi Yehuda holds about Berera. The Mishnah says, a person buys wine from the Samaritans, from the Kutiim. Now these are people who at a certain time in Jewish history were accepted as Jews, so people would buy wine from them. Right. They're of the Avodah Zarah. So Rashi says, Kodem shegazru alehem. Okay, now the problem was, what's the problem? You have wine. You have to separate out of the wine tiruma, ma'aser, and it's right before Shabbat. It was Erev Shabbat im hashecha. You don't have, normally what do? You take your Tupperware or whatever, you take one bottle, you say, okay, I'm going to pour some into this for Terumah, give that to the Kohen later, pour some into this for the Levi, give it to him later. You didn't have time to do that. So what can you do? What you can do is like this. Omed ve'omer, you stand next to the big barrel of wine and you say, Shnei lugin shani atid lehafrish. The 2 lug that I separate later, I'm going to separate after Shabbat, harehen teruma, they will be teruma. In other words, I will decide. Right. So you want to. This is before when they were still considered Jews. So, but it wasn't. There was no teruma taken, and you can't take teruma on Shabbat. So what happens? The guy says, "Listen, this barrel has 10 gallons of wine. Okay, 1 gallon, 2 gallons. I'm going to separate after Shabbat. That will be teruma." Okay, and he says, "Asara maser rishon, tisha maser sheni." So what does he say? He says what you can do is without separating out the actual amounts. In other words, you say 2 lug will be for teruma, 10 will be for ma'aser rishon, 9 will be for ma'aser sheni. But it's all in the barrel. You didn't separate it physically. You didn't physically take it out. Okay, and you can take a coin and say whatever maaser sheni, because remember maaser sheni just has to be brought to Jerusalem and eaten. Anybody can eat it, so you can take the kedusha off right away. You just say, okay, there's 9 log in there that is maaser sheni. The kedusha goes on this money, so that you got rid of right. It's before Shabbat, but it's right before Shabbat, so you got rid of that problem. But you have maaser rishon in there, and you also have teruma in there. You haven't identified. It would be like if you had a bottle of soda and you say a cup of the soda in here is teruma. A cup of it is going to be maaser. Whatever's left over after Shabbat, that's going to be the 2 cups. So right now you're not deciding. Rabbi Meir says that's fine. You don't need to decide right now. Decide later. However, we turn to Amud Bet already. Nun Vav Amud Bet. That was the quickest Amud that we've ever done. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon Osrin. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon all say that you cannot do such a thing. Alma en berera. What does that sound like? En berera? You cannot say, I'm going to take this bottle, and after Shabbat, whatever is left over, that's going to be the Terumah. Why? Because you need to decide right now. Berera means you're going to leave it for later. You're relying on your decision of later. You can't do that. You have to make the decision now. So they say you can't do that. So, but mimai, why is that not a good proof? Because dilma shanei hatam kedekatane ta'ama. Because that's different. It says in the Mishnah what the reason is. Amrulo le Rebbe Meir, iyatamodeh shema yebaka hanod v'nimtza shotet tivalim lemafreya. Because the reason why Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon did not allow you to rely on Rabbi Meir's suggestion and say, I'm going to separate the Terumah after Shabbat, and I'm going to separate the Maaser after Shabbat. I'll determine which gallons in here go to each thing after Shabbat. Why did he not allow you to do that? Because what happens if you're drinking happily from this barrel of wine on Shabbat, and what happens? It springs a leak. And all the rest of the wine spills out. You drank half of it, thinking, okay, I'm going to leave the other half for after Shabbat. And what happens? Unbeknownst to you, termites got into the barrel, bored a hole in, the wine came out. So now what? So what did you give to Terumah? 0. What did you give to Maaser? Nothing. So what happens? Nimtza shotet tivalim lemafreya. So what happens? You drank something that never had Terumah separated. Why not? Because you never had a chance. In other words, you were relying that after Shabbat I'm going to separate. What happens if there's no after Shabbat? What happens if it's not there anymore? So it's not that Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon are necessarily saying that you can't do that. In theory, you could say, whatever I separate after Shabbat will be the Terumah. I'm going to drink it now. And two lug that I separate after Shabbat will be the Terumah. You could do that. The only problem is, what happens if it leaks out and you don't have it anymore? So that's why they said not to do that. But Rabbi Meir said to them, Amar lahem, li chishiyibaka. I'll deal with that problem when it happens. In other words, the fact is, you're allowed to do this. You want to be worried about some remote thing that the wine is going to leak out or this and that. When that happens, we'll deal with it. Right now, you said, whatever terumah, I'm designating terumah in this barrel, whatever I leave over at the end of Shabbat.
But are they saying that, are they agreeing that Brera is not acceptable, or are they saying that this is not Brera?
The Gemara is now assuming that everyone's holding that Brera is acceptable. Because look, they're all saying,
right, so in
saying, theory at least, you could say, I'll determine which terumah it's going to be after Shabbat.
Right.
And I get to benefit from that right now. In other words, I'm saying it right now because I want to drink the chulin, even though I'm not going to commit. I'm being non-committal. I'm going to commit to which part is the terumah later.
Right. So what they're saying is that indeed this is Brera.
But it's okay.
But it's okay.
You see that they're saying it's okay. The only problem that they had was a practical problem, which is what happens if you say that, and then at the end of Shabbat, it all leaked out. So then you never did separate terumah. Lema'aseh, you never did anything.
You drank something.
Right, you already drank it. So therefore, that cannot be. That is not a proof for Rabbi Yehuda. In that Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda does hold the Brera. So where do you see that Rabbi Yehuda does not believe in Brera? That you can. Where do you see that he holds that you need to determine things right now? Ela miditane ayo. It's like Ayo taught. Ayo is the name of a person. Ditane Ayo, because Ayo taught in a Braita. Rabbi Yehuda omer en adam matne al shnei dvarim ke'achad. Ela imba chacham lemizrach eruvo lemizrach lema'arav eruvo lema'arav. Aval lekan ulchan lo. What did Ayo say? He said, Rabbi Yehuda says, listen, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't burn hold the rope at both ends, right? You can't do it. Meaning, let's say we're talking about a case of erovei techumin. There's a limit on how far outside the city limits you're allowed to go. Correct? You want to extend it further to be. Why? Why do you want to extend it further? Because there's a chacham coming. He's coming to give a shiur, and he's going to be outside the techum. So you want to put erovei techumin that allows you to go past the Tichum limit. Normally it's 2,000 amot. You want to go an additional distance in one of the directions. Either you want to go east or you want to go west. The only problem is you can't do this. You can't say, well, Rabbi Yisachar Frand is coming to the east, and Rabbi what's his name, Hanoch Teller is coming to the west. I don't know who those rabbis they come. He's coming to the west. So I don't know. I'll decide in the morning which one I want to go to. Right now, I don't know which one. Or Eli Mansour is coming to the west. I'll decide if I want to go Ashkenazi or Sephardic in the morning. So I'll put one Eruv Techumin to the east to go to one lecture, one Eruv Techumin to the west, and I'll decide in the morning. So he says, "En adam matneh al shnei dvarim ke'achad." You can't do that. You have to decide which one, east or west. V'havenan ba. And we ask the question, Maishna lekan ulchan dila. Why is it that you can't do it on both sides? Why de'en brera? Because you're telling me that you can't do it on both sides and decide later. La mizrahu ma'arav nami en brera. So why are you telling me that when you put it to the east and the west, that it's not a problem? In other words, if you read what Rabbi Yehuda says, he says you can't have two things on this at the same time. You can't put both. In other words, one to the east and one to the west and say, I'll decide in the morning. But what you can say is, put it to the east and the west and say, if Rabbi Mansour comes to the west, that's the real Eruv. If he comes to the east, that's the one that I meant. You're allowed to do that. So wait a second, sir. How's that different? Right, well, how's that different? In other words, if I say, tomorrow morning I'm going to decide east or west, whether I feel like going to Rabbi Mansour to the west or I want to go to Rabbi Friend to the east, that's not okay. But if I put one Eruv to the west and one Eruv to the east, and I say, I don't know which town Rabbi Mansour is coming. Is he coming to west or east? I'll find out tomorrow. I'm going to hear tomorrow. So you know what? Whichever one it is, that's the one that I want. So what's the difference?
There's a target.
No,
right.
That's what you are saying. It's at 9, like you do at 9.
Right. It's like, but it's the same thing as brera, because when does the Eruv have to take effect? Erev Shabbat. At sunset it has to take effect in Ben Shemashot. And you're saying Saturday morning I'm going to know. So you put two, one over here, one over there, and you say, okay, Saturday morning, either that one will be good, or that one will be good. I don't know which one. So in both cases, it's Tanai. No, the question is, why is Rabbi Yehuda, in one case,
external action, the other one is not.
In one case, he's making it sounds like, Tosafot says, so the Tosafot says, well, maybe you'll say a distinction that in one case it's your choice. You're getting up in the morning and saying, I want to go to this one. The other one is external. But the Gemara doesn't give that distinction. So the Tosafot says, obviously that's not the good distinction, because it's not the one the Gemara gives. What does the Gemara answer? Va'amar Rabbi Yochanan said, in other words, what it means is like this, that Rabbi Yehuda really doesn't hold the brera. You can't decide Shabbat morning. You have to decide Friday night. The only thing is, what's the difference? The Chacham arrived when? Before Shabbat. You just didn't know where he arrived. So what that you didn't know? In other words, you put one to the east and one to the west. You said whichever one Rabbi Mansour is coming, that's the one that's my Eruv. You didn't know. But it was decided on Friday, okay? Now, if you said he's coming on Shabbat morning, which would be unlikely, he's traveling on Shabbat morning, or you decide I'm going to choose on Shabbat morning, then you're setting up the Eruv on Friday, and you're determining which one is the real Eruv on Shabbat. But here, when did the Chacham actually come? Friday. So when was your Eruv actually established? Friday. It's just that you didn't know until Shabbat morning. You didn't know, it's not my problem.
So it's the same thing like...
So wait, but what does that show you?
Let's say I say tomorrow I'm going to go to Bet Shalom, right?
Right.
But I have no idea where Bet Shalom is, but I'm just going to ask directions. So
right.
Bet Shalom could be this way or it could be this way. Right?
But it's still there.
I don't know, but it's still there.
Right, it's still there. Right.
The same thing.
Right, so that's what he's saying. Right. So basically, it's not brera. Why not? Because brera would be if my Eruv was indeterminate, my east one and my west one, I put one to the west, one to the east, and on Friday night, when the Eruv is supposed to take effect, it is not clear which one is good. Why? Because I made it dependent on my decision on Shabbat morning, or because I made it dependent on something that's going to happen on Shabbat. That doesn't work, Rabbi Yehuda says. But if what you made it dependent on happens on Friday, just that the information doesn't reach you until Shabbat morning, but it happened on Friday. So in God's mind, so to speak, in reality, it happened on Friday. The Eruv was set on Friday. You just find out in the morning. That's okay, according to Rabbi Yehuda. So that shows us that what? That he doesn't hold of brera. You cannot use brera to your advantage. In brera. And now that we understand that the whole reason why Rabbi Yehuda does not allow a person, for instance, does not allow them to make a kuppah, a box for the chatat. Why? Because if a person dies, we can't take money out of the kuppah and say, this money was Bill's money. We can't do that. That's brera. We can't do that. So that's the reason why he doesn't allow it. But really, but haketiva itle, but writing, he relies on labels. If there's a label on the box, that's good enough. So then if that's the case, then Yoma Kippurim nami na'avid tirei v'nichtov alayu v'nichtov alayu. So he says, why can't we just do the same thing with regard to the kanim? In other words, when it comes to the stands in the hechal, you're going to put the blood of the par on one and the blood of the sa'ir on the other. You're going to put the blood of the bull on one, the blood of the goat on the other. According to the chachamim, there are two stands, right? So why does Rabbi Yehuda not have two stands? Right on one, this is where the blood for the bull goes. Right on the other one, this is for the sa'ir. Why not? So it says, Mishum chulshat de kohen gadol lavadate. Since the Kohen Gadol is very tired on Yom Kippur, because remember, they don't let him eat very much the day before, and they make him stay up all night, and he's doing all the avodah and carrying all this heavy stuff and running around. So he's exhausted. When you're tired, that's when you don't read instructions too carefully, right? So we're afraid he's going to mess up. So we only want him to hold one at a time. So since he's holding only one at a time, he's not going to get them mixed up. Then the Gemara says, because if you're not going to assume that the issue here is the tiredness of the Kohen Gadol, there are other ways that the Kohen can tell the difference between the blood of the bull and the blood of the goat. For instance, hay nafish, v'hay zutar. The blood of the par, the blood of the bull is more. There's more blood from a bull than from a goat. Okay, so in other words, if the Kohen Gadol is in his full faculties and fully aware of what's going on, he doesn't need a label on the stand to tell him which is which. He could look at it and see one has more, one has less. He knows the one has more is the bull. And maybe you'll say that he didn't receive all the blood from the bull. That's not true. We learned this earlier, that he must receive all of the blood from the bull. So you can't say, well, they'll have the same amount. No, the one that contains the blood of the bull is going to have more. So he's going to see that. You must say then what? That he's going, that it's so because he's tired.
Why is it important, Rabbi?
What?
The par and the...
These are two different korbanot. One korban is for the Kohen Gadol and the Kohanim. One is kapara for the people, for everybody else. So and it has to be done in an order. First the par, then the sa'ir, then the par, then the sa'ir, then the two together. So he doesn't want to get them mixed up. And if he does them out of order, it gets invalidated.
What he does with the blood?
First he sprinkles it in front of the Aron in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Then he sprinkles the blood. First he sprinkles the blood of the bull. Then he sprinkles the blood of the goat. It goes on the ground, in front of the Aron, and then he does it in front of the Parochet, and then he does it on the Mizbeach HaZahav. So these things that he has to do, they have order to them, so he can't get mixed up between when he's doing the par and when he's doing the sa'ir. Maybe he'll tell me, Dilma mishtapech minei. Maybe he'll spill some of it. In other words, maybe it'll get spilled, and so you'll have an equal amount of goat blood and bull blood, and he won't be able to tell the difference. And that's why Rabbi Yehuda is concerned that he won't be able to tell the difference between the two. That's also not true, because hay chivar v'hay sumak, because the blood of a bull is darker red, the blood of a goat is lighter, and therefore, since it's lighter, you'll be able to tell the difference. Qualitatively, he'll be able to tell the difference. So therefore, what do you must say? Ella mishum chulshat de kohen gadol lavadate. Hachana mishum chulshat de kohen gadol lavadate. In other words, the principle here is that Rabbi Yehuda says we don't want to rely on the kohen gadol to pay attention to fine distinctions, not to labels, not to which one is redder, not to which one is more. Because if we're relying on him to pay attention to quantity, quality, labels, when he's that tired, he's going to mess up. Better that we have one stand at a time. So he has to always have one of them in his hand. He'll never have a situation where they're both down on the stand, then he has to figure out which one is which. Because then he could mess up. If he's always holding one, we're not as concerned. And that's why Rabbi Yehuda says, so when he comes out with the blood of the par, he puts it on the stand. Then he brings the blood of the sa'ir. Then he has to take the blood of the par, put the blood of the sa'ir down. So he never has both of them sitting down in one place because there's only one stand. It says, that a certain chazan went to pray in the synagogue of Rava, the Shaliach Tzibor, and they were reading, as Rashi says, Ve'aya omer seder Yoma Kippurim batfilah kamo she'anu omrim. That's what Rashi says. They were saying the order of the Avodat Yoma Kippurim in the Musaf, just like we do. And what happens? When he read it, Amar Yatza v'nichol kan sheni shebahechal. It said that the Kohen Gadol went out of the Kodesh HaKodeshim and put the blood of the Sa'ir, the blood of the goat on the second stand in the Kodesh, right? Which is what you do, according to the Chachamim. Why? Because the blood of the bull was already done. You came out and you put it on the stand. Then you took the blood of the goat, and then you come out and you put it on the stand. Okay? And then he said, Natal damapar v'hiniach damasa'ir. But then it said he picked up the blood of the bull and he put down the blood of the goat. What do you mean he picked up the blood of the bull and put down the blood of the goat? That's the other way around. Right? In other words, if he's coming out of the Kodesh and putting blood on the second stand, what is the blood that goes on the second stand? The goat blood. So that means he's putting down the blood of the Sa'ir and he's going to pick up the blood of the bull. But this Chazan said he took the blood of the bull and put down the blood of the goat. That's not right. Why would he pick up the one that's already sitting there and then put down the one that he has in his hand? First you put down what you have in your hand, then you take the other one. So why did he do it out of order? Amar he said to him, Chadak Rabbanan v'chadak Rabbi Yehuda. Your version is mixing the two halachot. One is following Rabbi Yehuda, one is following the Chachamim. Because on one hand, you're saying that there are two stands, which means when the Kohen Gadol comes out of the Kodesh HaKodeshim, having finished the application of the goat blood, which is the second, he's going to put it on the second stand. And then he's going to pick up the bull blood. But you didn't say that. You said he's going to come out and he's going to take the bull blood again, which is correct. But you said then he's going to put down the goat blood. But that's not true. Since there are two stands, what's he going to do? He's going to put, according to the Chachamim, he would put down the goat blood first and then pick up the bull blood. Because they can both be resting at the same time. Only according to Rabbi Yehuda would he first have to pick up the bull blood and then put down the goat blood, because there's only one stand. You see? So that's the reason. So he said to him, rather it should say that he first put down the goat blood, and then he picked up the bull blood. In other words, that's the order according to Chachamim. That there are two stands. If there's one stand, he's got to take the blood of the bull in order to put down the blood of the sa'ir. But if there are two stands, he'll first put down the blood of the sa'ir and then take the blood of the bull, of course, because that's more practical and that's the reason why he has two stands. Then it says, then after he has already done the blood applications inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim, he comes to outside the parochet and he applies the blood in front of the parochet. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbi said, why does it say that this is what he should do for Ohel Moed? Ohel Moed refers to the Kodesh, not the Kodesh HaKodeshim. So why does it say this is what he should do? Just like he sprinkles the blood in front of the Aron inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the same thing that he does in the Kodesh. Ma lifnai lifnim achat lemala v'sheva lemata midam apar kach mazeh b'hichal u'kshem shelifnai lifnim achat lemala v'sheva lemata midam asair kach mazeh b'hichal. So just like he does one upward motion with the blood of the bull and 7 downwards motions, okay, and then one upward motion with the blood of the sa'ir, of the goat, and 7 downward motions, the same thing he's going to do in front of the parochet when he comes out of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. The pasuk says, "Hashochen itam betoch tumatam," that Hashem dwells with the Jewish people amidst their impurity. Afilu b'shat shehen tmeim, shechina imahem. Even at the time that they're impure, God's presence is with them. Amar le hahut tzadoki, the Rabbi Chanina, a certain Sadducee heretic said to Rabbi Chanina, "Hashta bari tmeim atun dichtiv tumata b'shulea." You guys are definitely tameh now. You're impure, you Jews. Why? How do I know that? Because it says in Echa, Tumata bishuleh. Her impurity is in her garments, right? In the bottom of her dress, meaning, you guys are impure, God is not with you. And this was a way of inciting and attacking, the Jews. Bishuleh, Amar le, ta'chazim ma ketiv bihu. But look what it says in the Torah, said Rabbi Chanina. It says, Hashochen itam betoch tumatam, that God dwells with the Jews even when they are in the midst of impurity. Afilu bazman shehen tmein shechina shiruya benehen. That even at the time that that they are impure, the divine presence is with them. And that's the response to the heretic who wants to say that today, it's like today, if other religions say, oh, God rejected you, He doesn't want you, He's not with you, we say, Hashochen itam b'toch tumatam.